You've probably come across this expression many times before, in books, podcasts, social media, and even in everyday conversations. Feminine energy. Some people say that if you reconnect with your feminine energy, you'll find more peace, your relationship will become more healthier, and even the way you see life will begin to change. But others believe that all of this is simply a modern belief without strong scientific evidence to support it. So, what's really going on? Does feminine energy actually exist? Or is it simply a term that has become more popular than ever before? Honestly, when I began researching this topic for this documentary, I thought the answer would be fairly simple. But the more I read, the more I realized the question was far more complex than I had imagined, because almost every field had its own perspective. Science say one thing, psychology look at it from another angle, philosophy offers a different interpretation, and ancient traditions tell a very different story. My dear friend, in this video we're simply going to explore together what science, psychology, philosophy, and ancient traditions actually say about this idea. Perhaps by the end of this journey we won't have found every answer, but perhaps we'll have a deeper understanding of this fascinating concept. Before we talk about feminine energy, I think we should begin with one important question. When people today talk about feminine energy, what exactly do they mean? Do they simply mean being female, or a collection of personality traits, or perhaps a spiritual concept? You might be surprised to learn that, contrary to what many people believe, feminine energy isn't a standardized scientific term. If you look into academic psychology and scientific research, you won't find a single university accepted definition. But if you explore personal development books or social media, you will come across a list of qualities. Qualities such as empathy, acceptance, calmness, intuition, creativity, nurturing, and the ability to connect deeply with others. Many people describe these qualities as feminine. But do these qualities really belong only to women? Modern psychology doesn't offer a simple answer. Research suggested that on average some of these traits may appear more frequently in women, but that doesn't mean men don't have them, or that all women share them to the same degree. In reality, every human being has a unique combination of these characteristics. And perhaps that is exactly why the meaning of feminine energy can be different from one person to another. But if there isn't one clear scientific definition, then why do we keep finding similar ideas across different cultures and throughout history? Perhaps to understand that, we need to travel a little further into the past. So far, we have seen that feminine energy doesn't have a single scientific definition. But perhaps a more important question has appeared: if this expression doesn't have a clear place in academic psychology, then why is everyone talking about it today? Honestly, when I began researching this topic, I noticed something interesting. Most of the people who talk about feminine energy aren't academic psychologists. Many of them are authors, public speakers, personal development coaches, relationship counselors, or people working in spiritual communities. Each of them has a slightly different definition, and because of that, sometimes two people use the same word while talking about two completely different ideas. Some describe it as the ability to remain calm during difficult moments. Others talk about intuition or creativity. Some see it in empathy and nurturing others, and the others believe it is mainly about acceptance, balance, and living in harmony. But when we turn to academic psychology and scientific research, the picture becomes a little different. Most psychologists don't use the expression feminine energy as a scientific term. However, nearly all of the qualities commonly placed under this label have been studied for decades. Empathy, intuition, creativity, nurturing, emotional regulation, and many others, just under different names and within different scientific frameworks. Perhaps that is why there is still no universal agreement about this expression. But one question still remains. If this phrase is so modern, then why, when we look back through history, do we finding ideas that sound surprisingly familiar? To explore the question, we need to take a short journey several thousand years into the past. Perhaps you're wondering, why should we travel into the past? Because if we want to better understand some of the beliefs that exist today about feminine energy, we first need to see how people thousands of years ago thought about these same qualities. Interestingly, long before the expression feminine energy ever existed, different civilizations were already associating qualities such as nurturing, intuition, creativity, fertility, wisdom, and even strength with feminine symbols. Of course, that doesn't mean all of these civilizations shared the same beliefs, or were talking about exactly the same idea. Quite the opposite. Each culture had its own interpretation. But when we place these civilizations side by side, one thing becomes difficult to ignore. In many of them, several qualities that many people today associate with feminine energy appear again and again through goddesses, symbols, and ancient stories. So, let's begin with one of the oldest civilizations in human history, ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt is a good place to start, not only because of the pyramids or pharaohs, but because of a figure who held a remarkable place in Egyptian belief, Isis. In Egyptian mythology, Isis was often associated with nurturing, loyalty, wisdom, and protection. She wasn't simply a symbol of kindness. In many ancient stories, Isis appears as someone who is intelligent, determined, resourceful, and willing to do whatever it takes to achieve her goal. Perhaps that is why many scholars who study ancient Egyptian symbolism describe her not only through compassion, but also through wisdom, resilience, and strength. Of course, these stories belong to Egyptian mythology and religious belief, not modern science, but they do show us that thousands of years ago, some of the qualities that many people today associated with feminine energy were already being expressed through the figure of Isis. But was Egypt the only civilization that saw things this way? Not at all. Let's travel to Mesopotamia. If we assume that all ancient civilizations share the same view of feminine qualities, Mesopotamia invites us to think again. Here we meet a goddess named Inanna, a figure who later became known in other cultures as Ishtar. If Isis mostly symbolized nurturing and wisdom, Inanna presented a very different image. She was associated not only with love, but also with power, not only with fertility, but also with war. Affairs that may sound contradictory, but to the people who told these stories, these qualities were not opposites. They didn't say femininity only through gentleness or emotion. They also connected it with courage, determination, strength, and the ability to bring change. Just like the stories of Isis, these accounts belong to ancient mythology, not modern science. Yet, when we place Egypt and Mesopotamia side by side, something interesting begins to appear. Both civilizations express certain qualities that many people today associate with feminine energy, but each did so in its own unique way. And perhaps that difference is one of the most fascinating parts of the story. After Egypt and Mesopotamia, our journey takes us to East Asia, to a civilization where philosophers thousands of years ago developed a very different way of understanding the world. Perhaps you've heard the word yin and yang many times before. Many people assume that yin simply means female and yang simply means male, but in Taoist philosophy, the story is more nuanced. Yin is more closely associated with qualities such as calmness, receptivity, stillness, and inward reflection. Yang, on the other hand, is associated with activity, movement, action, and outward expression. But the most important idea is this: according to Taoist philosophy, no human being is purely yin or purely yang. Every person contains both. The goal was never for one to defeat the other, but rather to create balance between them. Perhaps that is one reason why today some people connect the idea of feminine energy with ancient Chinese philosophy. At the same time, it's important to remember that these ideas belong to a philosophical tradition thousands of years old, not to a concept that modern science has established as a scientific fact. If ancient China spoke about balance between yin and yang, India introduces us another idea, Shakti. Perhaps you've heard the name before, perhaps not. In many Hindu traditions, Shakti refers to the power of creation, life, and transformation. That is one reason why some people today connect the idea of feminine energy with Shakti. But once again, it's important to be careful. In Hindu philosophy, Shakti isn't something that belongs only to women. It is understood as a fundamental force necessary for creation, movement, and life itself. Many Hindu texts describe Shakti as the dynamic force without which transformation couldn't occur. Of course, these ideas belong to ancient religious and philosophical traditions, not to conclusions reached by modern psychology or neuroscience. Yet, when we place Egypt, Mesopotamia, China, and India side by side, something becomes remarkably interesting despite their many differences. Each tradition describes a collection of qualities or forces that many people today associate with feminine energy. But are these similarities simply a coincidence, or did they later influence modern psychology? To explore that, we need to move forward several thousand years to the 20th century and a man named Carl Jung. Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist. He never used the expression feminine energy in the way it's often used on social media today. No. Instead, he believed that every person carries psychological qualities traditionally associated with the opposite sex. He called the feminine aspect within the male psyche the Enma, and the complementary aspect within the female psyche the Enmas. According to Jung, no person is completely masculine or completely feminine. Each of us is a unique blend of many psychological qualities. At the same time, it's important to remember that although Jung's idea had an enormous influence on psychology, not all of them are as accepted today as scientifically established findings. Many of his concepts remain most influential within analytical psychology and symbolic interpretation. Perhaps that is why Jung's name often appears whenever people talk about feminine energy. But do modern neuroscience and contemporary research see the subject in the same way? What does modern neuroscience actually say? Have researchers found something called feminine energy inside the human brain? At least so far the answer is no. No. Scientists have not identified a superstructure or force in the brain called feminine energy. But the story doesn't end there. Many studies have found average differences between women and men in certain biological, hormonal, and some behavioral patterns. However, researchers agree on one important point. These differences don't mean that there are two completely different kinds of human brains. In fact, the similarities between male and female brains are far greater than differences. Perhaps that is one of the most important messages modern science has to offer. Human beings are more complex than any single label can fully describe. After everything we've explored together, perhaps we've realized that the answer isn't as simple as it first seemed. Science looks at this subject from one perspective, psychology from the other. Ancient civilizations expressed their idea through symbols and myths, while philosophy tried to give them meaning. But when we place them together, the picture becomes a little clearer. Perhaps by the end of this journey, we haven't found every answer. But perhaps we've gained a deeper understanding of this idea. And now I'll leave the final question with you. Do you think something called feminine energy really exists? And at the end, we're not here to prove the truth to one another. We're here to search for it together. Welcome to Human Paradox.